The turkey had been out of the oven for 12 minutes when Daniel stood and tapped his fork against his water glass. Everyone looked up. I had spent 2 days on Thanksgiving dinner. The good china was on the table. The set with the thin blue rim that George used to say made ordinary food look expensive. Karen had brought sweet potatoes. Laura had baked a pecan pie. Sophie had folded the napkins into crooked fans and laughed when I told her they looked like injured birds. For a few minutes, the house felt full again. Daniel rested one hand on the back of my chair. "I'm thankful we're all here," he said, "and I'm especially thankful Mom finally agreed that it's time for memory care." No one laughed. A glossy brochure had been placed on my dinner plate. The cover showed a white building with flower boxes beneath every window. A date had been circled in red ink. Monday. My fork struck the china. "What is this?" Daniel's hand tightened on my chair. "Mom." I asked what this is. Laura looked down. Karen's face took on the careful expression she had used during the last months of George's illness. Sophie stared at the brochure and did not touch the cider Daniel had poured for the toast. Daniel pulled out the chair beside me. "We talked about this." "No, we didn't." He lowered his voice. "You wouldn't remember." Karen reached toward my hand. I moved it into my lap. "Eleanor," she said, "let him explain. This is my house." "Of course it is," Daniel said. No one said otherwise. I looked at Laura. "Did you know about this?" She brushed a crumb from the tablecloth. "Daniel said you were ready." "Ready for what?" Her eyes moved to him. Daniel exhaled. "Mom, please don't do this in front of everyone." "You stood up in front of everyone." Karen tried again. "You've had a difficult year." "I buried my husband 2 years ago." "I know." "Then don't speak to me as if it happened last week." Daniel leaned forward. "This isn't about Dad." "Then tell me what it is about." He glanced around the table before answering. "The electric bill was late twice. You missed your appointment with Dr. Klein. Last month you called because you couldn't get into your bank account." "I called because the password didn't work." "You said you couldn't remember it." "I said the password I wrote down didn't work." Daniel rubbed his forehead. "That's what I mean." My chest tightened because parts of his story were true. The electric bill had been late. I remembered finding the red notice under grocery flyers. I had also gone to Dr. Klein's office on a Thursday and learned that the appointment in the system had been on Tuesday. At the time, I blamed the calendar on my phone. I looked at the red circle again. Monday was 4 days away. What did I sign? Daniel's expression shifted for less than a second. "We can review the paperwork after dinner." "What did I sign?" "You signed documents after your knee surgery. You asked me to handle things. That was 18 months ago. And I have been handling them." Laura lifted her water glass. The ice clicked against the sides. Karen said, "Maybe we should eat before everything gets cold." No one reached for the food. I opened the brochure. It showed a dining room, a garden path, and smiling gray-haired women arranging flowers. Near the back was a page titled "Your Next Chapter." The bottom half had been folded under. I unfolded it. There was a line for my signature. It was blank. Daniel took the brochure and closed it. "We don't need to do this tonight." He was the one who had chosen the night and the audience. I pushed away from the table. The chair scraped hard enough to make Sophie flinch. "I need a minute." Daniel started to rise. "Alone." I walked toward my bedroom with one hand against the wall. I had lived in that house for 31 years. I knew the dip in the hallway floor and the board that creaked near the stairs. Even so, I slowed before turning the corner. 3 cardboard boxes stood outside my door. Bedroom. Kitchen. Personal. The labels were written in Daniel's block handwriting. The top box was open. 2 winter sweaters lay inside with George's watch box and the framed photograph from our 25th anniversary. I lifted the photograph. A clean rectangle of wood showed where it had been removed from the shelf. The dining room behind me stayed quiet. I carried the picture into the small den and woke the shared computer. The screen opened to Daniel's account because he had forgotten to sign out. I did not open his email. I did not need to. A row of image files filled the desktop. Front exterior, kitchen wide, primary bedroom, backyard. I opened the first file. My house appeared in bright afternoon light, photographed from the curb like a property listing. The next image showed the living room with the family photographs removed from the mantel. I could not remember anyone taking those pictures. That was what frightened me most. Either Daniel had done all of this without my consent, or something important had happened in my own home and I had lost it completely. I slept for less than 3 hours. By 6 the next morning, the furnace was the only sound in the house. Daniel, Laura, and Sophie were asleep upstairs. Karen had gone home after dinner. But not before whispering, "Let him help you." The brochure and the papers Daniel mentioned were gone. I dressed, returned George's photograph to my nightstand, and drove to the library parking lot before anyone came downstairs. The library did not open until 9, but I called the number from a photograph I had taken of the brochure. Maple Grove Senior Living. This is Marissa. After verifying my identity, she found my file. You have an intake appointment Monday at 10 in the morning. Mrs. Vance. Am I scheduled to move in? The room is being held while we wait for the assessment and completed admission documents. Do you have an agreement signed by me? No, ma'am. So Monday is an intake, not a confirmed move. That is correct. Who scheduled it? Your son is listed as the primary contact. I told her to cancel the appointment. She said a room deposit of $2,000 was under review and any refund could take several business days. She could not see which account had paid it. Marissa gave me a confirmation number. I wrote it on the back of a grocery receipt and confirmed that future communication should come to me. Monday had been presented as a locked decision. It was an appointment, an unsigned file, and a room someone had placed on hold. At a coffee shop, I checked the calendar on my phone. Dr. Klein's appointment showed Tuesday, October 14th. I remembered arriving on Thursday with a paperback in my purse. The receptionist had said I was 2 days late. Then I checked the electric account. Daniel had been right about that too. 2 payments had been late in 4 months. There were ordinary explanations: grief, poor sleep, too many people in the house. I had walked into the pantry and forgotten why. The week before Thanksgiving, I left tea in the microwave overnight. George had started with small mistakes. He called a neighbor by the wrong name. He bought 3 bottles of mustard in 1 week. At first, he laughed. Later, he stared at a checkbook he had used for 40 years and asked me where to sign. I did not want fear to turn every lapse into proof. I also did not want pride to hide a real problem. On a napkin, I wrote what I knew: 2 late bills, 1 missed appointment, 1 failed password. Then what I did not know: who changed the password, who scheduled Maple Grove, who paid the deposit, and who photographed the house. At 10, I called the electric company. A representative confirmed that the account had been switched to paperless billing in August. The notices were going to Daniel's email. The change had been made on August 19th. I remembered that afternoon. Daniel had sat at my kitchen table and said the utility website required a security update. He asked me to read him the verification code sent to my phone. The representative restored my email address and agreed to mail confirmation. The late bill was real. The notices had been redirected. When I returned home, I took a blue ledger from the bottom drawer of my desk. I had used the same kind during my years in payroll because I trusted paper when numbers mattered. On the first line, I wrote, August 19th, electric account changed to paperless billing. Contact email changed to Daniel's address. Below it, I recorded the Maple Grove cancellation number and the unresolved deposit. I did not know whether Daniel had made one bad decision, taken over more than I understood, or built a plan around keeping me confused. Until I knew, I would not confront him. That evening, Sophie knocked on my bedroom door. You knew about Monday, right? She asked. No. Her eyes moved to the ledger. Daniel called her from downstairs before she could say more. She returned 20 minutes later, closed the door, and pulled 4 folded pages from beneath her sweater. Dad left the originals by the printer on Wednesday. she said. I copied them. I did not go into his computer. The first page was titled Transition Plan. Under it were short entries. Maple Grove intake. Monday transition. Prepare house for sale. My name appeared throughout. My handwriting appeared nowhere. A line on the second page had been underlined in blue. Advance for Daniel's housing. There was no amount or explanation. Daniel was listed as financial contact and power of attorney. This is not a contract, I said. I know. It is his plan. Why did you copy it? Dad said you picked Maple Grove. At dinner, you looked like you had never seen the brochure. She worried a torn cuticle with her thumb. I heard him tell Mom the house could close fast. He called the advance temporary help. George had used that phrase years earlier. Daniel called for her again. Are you going to tell him I gave you this? Sophie asked. No. She slipped into the hallway. I placed the pages beneath the ledger. They did not prove every part of Daniel's plan. They showed that he had written my future before I agreed to it. On Monday morning, I sat across from Dr. Maya Patel with the blue ledger on my lap. I had called Friday and taken an opening created by a cancellation. I told the receptionist that I wanted a medication review and a cognitive and functional assessment. Saying those words had made my mouth dry, but I said them anyway. Dr. Patel began with ordinary questions. What medications did I take? Had I fallen? How was I sleeping? Was I eating? How often did I drive? Who paid my bills? I do, I said. 2 were late. I'm checking why. She asked about George. I admitted that some mornings I stayed in bed because getting up meant remembering he was still gone. I had lost 6 pounds in 5 months. I had not stopped cooking, shopping, driving, or managing the house. Then came the screening tasks. I knew the date and where I was. I repeated numbers backward, drew a clock, and explained what I would do if I smelled smoke in a crowded theater. When she asked me to recall 5 words, I gave her 4. The missing word stayed just out of reach. River, she said at last. I had repeated window twice. Dr. Patel set down her pen. This is a screening, Eleanor. It is not a permanent statement about capacity. And one visit cannot answer every question. I understand. What I see today does not match the level of impairment your son has described. Your reasoning is sound. Your daily functioning appears largely intact. Grief, sleep, medication effects, and physical health can affect memory. So I want blood work, follow-up, and more history. Relief came with an uncomfortable amount of embarrassment over the word river. So I shouldn't ignore the possibility. I said. No, you should take changes seriously. But ordinary mistakes, by themselves, are not a diagnosis. The records and your daily functioning have to be considered together. She did not take a side. She gave me a standard for judging the evidence. At the front desk, I asked the receptionist to check the appointment with Dr. Klein. Her finger stopped halfway down the screen. Your original appointment was Thursday, October 16th, she said. It was cancelled by phone and rebooked for Tuesday, October 14th. I did not call. She leaned closer. The note says, Son called. My phone had accepted the automated calendar change. I had arrived on Thursday with my paperback because Thursday was the date I remembered being given. By then, the system showed Tuesday as a missed visit. I asked for a printed copy of the appointment history. In the parking lot, I placed it behind Sophie's pages. One of Daniel's examples had not been a memory failure. Someone had moved the appointment, and Daniel had later used the missed Tuesday date as evidence against me. That evening, Laura found me at the dining table. I was labeling a folder medical records when she came in with her purse still over one shoulder. Daniel said you cancelled Maple Grove. Yes. You could have told us. Like I was told? She looked toward the stairs. I thought you chose the smaller place near St. Mark's. My pen stopped. What smaller place? The apartment near the church. Daniel said you liked it. Her voice became less certain. He said Maple Grove was temporary until the apartment was ready. I have never toured an apartment near St. Mark's. Laura stared at me, then at the ledger beside my elbow. She did not apologize. She walked into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and stood there without taking anything out. I wrote St. Mark's apartment on the next blank line. Then I added, find the power of attorney. Read every page. By then, I had more than suspicion. I had a copied plan. A medical screening that did not support Daniel's claim. A clinic record showing that my appointment had been moved. And Laura's account of a home I had never chosen. None of those records proved every part of Daniel's plan. Together, they told me I had to stop relying on his version of my life. The power of attorney was in the fireproof box beneath George's life insurance papers. I found it after everyone went upstairs. My signature was on page 9. Dated 3 weeks after my knee replacement. I remembered signing while I was still using a walker. I did not remember how broad the language was. By Tuesday afternoon, the document lay open on Rebecca Chen's conference table. Rebecca had handled George's estate. She made small pencil marks in the margins and did not fill silence to make clients comfortable. What do you want to accomplish? She asked. I want to keep my house. Do you want the house? Or the right to decide what happens to it? The right to decide. Then we separate what the document allows, what Daniel has done, and what you want to change. The power covered banking, credit accounts, insurance, taxes, and some real property matters. Can he sell the house without asking me? I cannot answer that from one checked box. Rebecca said, I need the complete document. The deed, any amendments, and evidence of what he attempted. Preparing photographs is not the same as completing a sale. It was not the clean answer I wanted, but it was honest. Rebecca asked whether Daniel had ever used my money without permission and whether I approved the expense later. I told her about Sophie's hospital bill. 2 summers earlier, an infection in Sophie's ankle required surgery. Insurance paid most of it, but $7,400 remained. Daniel used my credit card before calling me. He arrived pale and talking fast. They were threatening collections. Laura was crying. I knew you would want Sophie taken care of. Sophie had been on my couch with her leg on 3 pillows. You did the right thing, I told him. I never asked for repayment. After the crisis, I preferred being useful to having the argument. Permission before a transaction, approval afterward, and future authority are separate questions. Rebecca said, your response to that bill did not give Daniel unlimited permission. But it taught him I would cover him. It may have taught him that you would avoid a confrontation after he acted. That matters in the family. It does not remove his legal duties. On the drive home, I kept hearing my own words. Daniel called the money family money. I corrected totals and asked for receipts. I rarely challenged the idea that he could decide first and explain later. Laura was alone in the kitchen when I returned, cutting carrots into uneven pieces. I need the words Daniel used. I said, not what you think he meant. About what? The house, where I was supposed to live. What he said you would receive. Laura set down the knife. He said you wanted to sell after the holidays because you were tired of managing the place. He said you would help us buy something. He said you considered the proceeds family money. And the apartment near St. Mark's? He said you chose it. I did not. Maybe you do not remember touring it. I placed the transition plan and the clinic history on the counter. Laura's eyes stopped at advance for Daniel's housing. What does that mean? I hoped you knew. I pointed to the clinic record. My Thursday appointment was moved to Tuesday. The note says my son called. Then Daniel used the missed Tuesday visit as evidence against me. This might mean he called because you asked him. It might. I am asking what he told you. Laura folded the dish towel in her hands. There was another plan, she said. In September, Daniel said the house might stay in the family. He asked me to get an estimate for a bedroom, bathroom, and sitting area in the basement. How much? About $38,000. We never hired anyone. So he told you the house might stay. By Thanksgiving, he said I had chosen to sell it and help you buy another one. Plans change. They were not my plans. No one had asked me. Laura pushed the papers back. I did not write this. No, but you requested the estimate. Her face tightened. I should have asked you first. It was not a full apology. It was the first sentence from her that did not protect Daniel. Upstairs, I opened the ledger. Under what I allowed, I recorded the hospital charge and what I had said afterward. Under what I authorized, I left a blank line until I could match each expense to a clear instruction. Daniel had not created our habits alone. George and I had spent years solving his emergencies in private. I had accepted explanations after the money was gone because being needed felt better than being angry. That did not make Daniel's transition plan mine. It showed me why canceling one appointment would not be enough. I placed the power of attorney beside the ledger and listed every account Daniel could reach. By Wednesday morning, the blue ledger had 3 columns. Authorized. Unclear. Not authorized. I spread 12 months of bank and credit card statements across the dining table. The first column included groceries I requested, property taxes, a plumbing repair, and Sophie's hospital bill, which I had approved afterward. The second included gas, restaurant charges, and household payments I could not assign with confidence. I did not call an expense unauthorized simply because I disliked it. Then I found a transfer for $5,600. The description named a creditor from Daniel's old remodeling business. The money had left my savings account 6 weeks earlier. I checked my calendar, email, messages, and ledger. There was no request and no approval. Laura came home in navy scrubs. Sophie was doing algebra at the kitchen island when I showed Laura the statement. "Can we do this somewhere else?" she asked. We went into the laundry room. That company account was closed. Laura said. Then what was paid? She opened a banking app. Then the email account she shared with Daniel. I thought there was $28,000 left. Maybe 30. Daniel said the payment plan was current. She found creditor notices, tax letters, and a statement showing a balance above $60,000. Daniel came home before we left the room. Laura held up her phone. "How much do we owe?" He looked at me and then at the transfer. "Mom, you went through my finances?" The payment came from my savings. I was going to replace it. When? After the house sold. Laura stood. "You said the house might stay in the family." I said we were considering options. "You told me the debt was under $30,000. The penalties changed. There were tax problems. I was fixing it." "With my money?" I asked. "You said family money was for emergencies." I approved one medical bill. And this family was close to losing everything. "What were you going to lose?" He did not answer. Sophie appeared at the end of the hall. Daniel lowered his voice. "This was not supposed to affect her." "Then stop using her as the reason you did it," I said. "The sale would have covered the debt. You still would have had plenty left." That was the first time he admitted that he had already assigned the value of my house to his creditors. I entered the transfer of $5,600 in the third column. The following afternoon, Karen arrived with a banker's box labeled Old Taxes in George's handwriting. "I should have brought this before now," she said. "How long before now?" "Before George got sick." The box held statements, cancelled checks, and notices from Daniel's business. George had written notes in the margins. Paid. Temporary. Last time. One check for $12,000 carried the memo final help. There had been 3 large payments over 6 years, a tax balance, a business credit card, and money that kept Daniel's truck from being repossessed. Together, they came to a little more than $44,000. Where did the money come from? George's separate savings, the account he had before you married. He had not taken it from our joint money. He had still hidden the arrangement. You knew? About 2 payments. George asked me not to worry you. He asked you not to tell me. Karen looked down. He thought Daniel needed one clean chance. He gave him more than one. I told myself it was between a father and a son. Whatever George intended, the secrecy now affects my house and my money. Karen reached toward me. I moved the ledger before her hand touched mine. "I am sorry," she said. I believed she regretted it. I was not ready to comfort her. After she left, I read the records again. George had paid Daniel's debts. I had excused later uses of my money. Each time, someone hid the full amount and called the silence help. Daniel learned that an emergency became acceptable if he made it frightening enough and connected it to someone we loved. Now Sophie was watching. The next morning, Rebecca met me before the bank opened. I signed a revocation of the power of attorney. Rebecca sent notice to Daniel and the institutions we had identified. She also notified the broker named in the photograph metadata that I had not authorized a listing or sale through Daniel. She warned me that the changes would not become effective in every computer system at once. At the bank, I opened a new checking account in my name alone. We redirected future deposits and moved automatic payments one at a time. I left the old account open with a reduced balance until outstanding checks cleared. I did not touch my individual retirement account. The bank began removing Daniel's online access. I removed him as an authorized user from my credit card and requested records of every transaction made under the power of attorney. Rebecca sent a written demand for an accounting. It did not guarantee repayment. It required a response and created a record. The Maple Grove deposit was still pending that morning. The facility credited it back to my card the following week. Only after the notices had been delivered did I go home. Daniel was in the kitchen with his phone. Why did my bank alert disappear? Because I revoked the power of attorney. He looked toward the dining room, where the ledger lay beside George's box. For once, he had no answer ready. Daniel kept his voice low. You went to Rebecca without telling me. Yes. She does not know what is happening in this house. She read the document and the account records. So now a lawyer makes decisions for you. No, I do. His mouth tightened. Rebecca is turning a family problem into a legal fight. The authority over my accounts ended. That is what happened. Daniel paced to the sink and back. You interrupted bills, the house paperwork, Maple Grove. Maple Grove was cancelled. I know. They contacted me after the notice. He folded his arms. Then we put everyone in one room. Karen, Linda, Paul, Laura. We review the care plan, the finances, and the power of attorney. Linda was my cousin. Paul was George's older nephew. Both had called after Thanksgiving to ask whether I was feeling clearer. When? I asked. 3 Sundays from now. That gives you time to prepare. It gives everyone time to calm down. He wanted Rebecca there to explain herself. I told him she would not attend. Why not? Because this is a family meeting. And I can speak for myself. Daniel studied my face, then nodded. Good, we will settle it ourselves. He believed the meeting would restore the old arrangement. I let him believe it. The following Tuesday, Rebecca called. Daniel thinks I will sign another power of attorney. I told her. Will you? No. Then what decision are you avoiding? I looked around the dining room. George and I had refinished the floor ourselves. The scrape near the window came from Daniel's high chair. Sophie's height marks were still inside the pantry door. The house. If Daniel had never made this plan, would you still want to live there alone for the next 10 years? I imagined another winter shoveling the walk, another spring paying someone to clean the gutters, and rooms I entered only to dust. I do not know. That is not the same as yes. 2 days later, I toured a second-floor apartment 7 miles away. It had an elevator, 2 bedrooms, wide doorways, and a narrow balcony. The public library was less than 2 miles away. A bus stop was visible from the kitchen window. My oak dining table would not fit. George had bought it after his first promotion. He insisted on solid wood because cheap tables, he said, always started wobbling when company arrived. For 31 years, I had treated the house as proof that we had built something permanent. But the roof would need work within a few years. The yard was more than I wanted to maintain. And most weeks I used only 4 rooms. Daniel's actions had forced me to examine the choice. The decision still belonged to me. I asked for an application. That evening, Sophie helped me measure the furniture. 84 inches, she said, holding the tape across the table. Too long. For the apartment? I nodded. Are you moving because of Dad? Your father made me look at choices I avoided. Moving would still be my choice. Sophie sat in George's chair. Mom says I should stay out of the middle. She is right. But everyone tells me something different. I want to know what happened. I am going to sell the house. Her eyes widened. Your father does not know yet. The money will remain mine. I need a few days before I tell him. Are you asking me to keep a secret? I am asking you not to carry messages between us. If he asks, tell him to ask me. We measured the china cabinet. It was too wide. The small bookcase and 4 dining chairs would fit. I submitted the apartment application the next morning. The house went on the market the following week through an agent I selected. She confirmed in writing that she represented me and would take instructions only from me. At my request, there was no yard sign. She scheduled limited showings while Daniel was at work. This time, I stood in every room while the photographs were taken. Laura had rental listings open on her laptop twice that week. She closed the screen when Daniel entered. She left it open when I walked past. I received 3 offers. I accepted the reasonable one. With a standard inspection, title work, and closing planned for about 5 weeks later. The 45-day move-out period extended slightly beyond the planned closing. So the buyer agreed in writing to a short post-closing occupancy period. Rebecca reviewed that clause before I signed. The sale remained subject to inspection, financing, title work, and final signatures. An accepted offer was not money in my account. I placed the contract and apartment brochure beneath the records in my folder. Then I carried 3 boxes into my bedroom. Keep. Donate. Apartment. I wrote the labels myself. Downstairs, Daniel was confirming Sunday's meeting with Karen. He sounded certain the room would belong to him. On Sunday afternoon, Daniel arranged the dining room like a staff meeting. He put a yellow legal pad at his place and set water glasses for Karen, Linda, and Paul. He moved George's chair closer to the wall. Laura sat beside him. Sophie chose the far end of the table. I left George's chair where Daniel had moved it. My folder rested on my knees. We are here because Mom has made several sudden decisions. Daniel began. She cancelled her care intake, revoked the power of attorney, moved money, and accused me of wrongdoing for things I did to help her. Linda glanced at me. Paul folded his arms. Daniel continued in the same calm tone. The electric bill was late twice. She missed a medical appointment. She could not remember her bank password. Her accounts became disorganized. Then she acted surprised about a move we had discussed for weeks. I let him finish. He repeated each example and said Maple Grove had been a temporary safety measure. Karen looked down. Laura's jaw tightened when he said, "We all agreed." When Daniel put down his pen, I opened the folder. The electric bill was late. I said, the account had been changed to paperless billing, and the contact email was changed to Daniel's address on August 19. I placed the utility confirmation on the table. You asked me to manage it, Daniel said. I asked for help with a security update. I did not ask you to redirect the bills. Next came the clinic record. My appointment with Dr. Klein was originally scheduled for Thursday, October 16. Someone moved it to Tuesday, October 14. The clinic note says, "Son called. I arrived Thursday because that was the date I had been given." Paul picked up the page. You asked me to help with scheduling, Daniel said. Then you knew the date had been changed. Why did you later use the Tuesday appointment as proof that I forgot? He did not answer. I placed the bank notice beside it. My written password stopped working after the recovery information was changed to Daniel's email. Calling him about a blocked login did not mean I forgot the password. Linda asked whether it could have been a normal security change. The change might have been normal, I said. Using the result against me was not. Then I set down the Maple Grove records. Monday was an intake appointment. There was no signed admission agreement and no completed assessment. No move-in was final. You cancelled a major appointment without discussing it, Daniel said. It concerned where I would live. We discussed it. You discussed it with other people. I placed the transition plan on top. This lists my move, The sale of my house. And an advance for Daniel's housing. I did not write it, approve it, or sign it. Daniel reached for the pages. It was a working draft. Then it was your draft. He turned to Laura. You knew what we were trying to do. Laura held her water glass with both hands. You told me Eleanor chose an apartment near St. Mark's. She said. She did. No, you told me she chose it. Before that, you told me the house might stay in the family and asked me to price a basement renovation. That was before her condition changed. You were promising different outcomes to different people. Laura did not apologize or explain. She simply said it where everyone could hear. Karen opened George's banker's box. George paid Daniel's business debts more than once. She said, I knew about 2 payments. George asked me not to tell Eleanor, and I agreed. Daniel pushed back from the table. Dad helped me through temporary problems. 3 large payments. Karen said, a little more than $44,000. That money was his. Yes, it was from his separate savings. The secrecy still affected Eleanor. I called it private because that was easier. I placed the record of the transfer of $5,600 beside the checks. This payment went from my savings to one of Daniel's creditors. I did not authorize it. I said I would replace it. After the house sold, Laura said. Daniel turned toward Sophie. What did you tell Grandma? Sophie went pale. Do not question her, I said. She has been in the middle from the beginning. She is 16. The adults put her there. Daniel planted both hands on the table. You are breaking up this family over paperwork and a house you cannot manage alone. I took the accepted offer from the bottom of the folder. I am not keeping the house. His hands lifted. The house is under contract. I accepted an offer. Closing is planned after the inspection. Title work, financing, and final signatures. You sold the house? I chose to sell it. You did not tell us. You announced my move at Thanksgiving before asking me. He turned the pages too quickly to read them. Where are we supposed to go? The written notice gives your household 45 days. The buyer agreed to the short occupancy period needed after closing. Laura has already begun looking at rentals. Daniel looked at Laura. She did not deny it. The proceeds will remain mine. I will open a college savings account with Sophie as beneficiary. I will own the account and name a successor owner who is not Daniel. Daniel will have no access. Sophie looked at me. You do not have to do that. I know. I slid Rebecca's letter toward Daniel. This requests a complete accounting and proposes repayment of the unauthorized funds. Future financial communication with me will be in writing. Daniel gave a short, humorless laugh. I was trying to keep us from losing everything. I looked at the unsigned plan. George's checks, the transfer from my savings, and the contract I had chosen. You decided I was the thing you could afford to lose. Daniel took the move-out notice and left. No one followed him. The weeks after the meeting were not simple. The inspection found an old water heater and minor roof work. The buyer requested a credit. Title work was delayed while an old lien release was located, and the closing date moved by 3 days. Laura and Sophie rented a 2-bedroom apartment near Sophie's school. Laura opened her own bank account. She did not ask me to decide whether she should stay married. Daniel rented a room elsewhere. The sale closed about 5 weeks after I accepted the offer. The post-closing occupancy agreement remained in effect until the 45-day deadline. But Laura and Sophie moved early. Daniel removed his last belongings 2 days before the deadline. The proceeds went into accounts in my name. None went to Daniel's creditors. After closing, I opened the college savings account with Sophie as beneficiary and kept ownership in my name. I moved into the apartment near the library with the small bookcase, George's watchbox, 4 dining chairs, and the blue ledger. I donated the oak table. The first week, I woke twice thinking I heard someone in the old hallway. Another morning, I reached for a light switch that was not there. Laura helped hang curtains. Her apologies came in pieces over several months. Usually after she remembered another time she had accepted Daniel's explanation without asking me. One apology did not settle it. I watched what she did next. Karen called before visiting. Sometimes I invited her in. Sometimes I did not. She stopped asking me to make her feel better about what she had hidden. Daniel did not come to the apartment. For months, our only communication concerned the accounting. He disputed some expenses, admitted others, and did not offer a complete apology. Near the end of the year, he signed a repayment agreement for the transfer of $5,600 and several smaller charges. 1 year after the meeting, Laura, Sophie, and Karen came to my apartment for Thanksgiving. The table was small enough that I could pass the potatoes without standing. Karen brought sweet potatoes. Laura made the pie. Sophie folded the napkins into crooked fans. One chair beside the window remained empty. An envelope arrived that morning. Inside was a receipt for Daniel's first payment and a short letter. He did not ask for access to my accounts, money, or an invitation. I placed the receipt and letter in the kitchen drawer beneath the blue pen. I did not throw them away. Sophie looked at the empty chair. Do you think he will be here next year? I do not know. That depends on what he does between now and then. Then I returned to the table before the food got cold.